Here to recap Bedlam, Guerin, Emig of the Tulsa World with colleague Bill Haisten, a couple of columnists who were home watching OU play OSU. That part was unfamiliar. A little more familiar, Bill, was the result. The Sooners doing what they typically do in the series, controlling the game, coming out with more poise, more energy, making bigger plays. And although not every win of Oklahoma's has been lopsided, this one certainly was 41-13, the final. I'll just off the jump ask you what sticks out about what you saw tonight.
Well, there's a consistency, Guerin, in these Bedlam games with one side being ready to play and making plays out of the gate, and that's OU, and the other side kind of being in response mode, and that's OSU. And I thought, well, this seems familiar. Well, I went back each of the last two seasons. OU needed less than 2 minutes to get on the board. And so OSU is immediately on its heels, immediately playing from behind. And then tonight, by the 6-minute mark, it's or was it the 9-minute mark? 6 minutes into the game, 21-0. Anyway, midway first quarter, it's 21-0, Guerin.
Right.
And considering the issues that Oklahoma State has with its offensive line, and considering that this offense as a whole has performed at about 50% of the expectation, statistically and otherwise, the game was over. Midway first quarter, the game was over, and then Sanders has to sit for 2 quarters, but putting a freshman behind that offensive line, it's an impossible assignment for that kid. And OU was just, and the truth is too, Guerin, and I'm sure you agree with this. OU's ranked 18th. Come on. In this season, they're no worse than 7th or 8th in the country right now.
Right.
Yeah.
You and I talked a couple of days ago about whether to believe in Oklahoma's defensive surge because they'd had 3 games where they built some confidence. But to be honest and fair, it was against 3 subpar offenses. Lincoln Riley was right when he said this week they were going to see a different skill level. Even if Wallace and Hubbard and Sanders, all 3, had been hampered by injuries, even if Oklahoma State's offensive line was inconsistent at best, this was going to be a different challenge. Did OSU provide enough of a challenge tonight for you to say OU's defense is on track? Are you a little more sure of that? Or was this just as much a story of the Cowboys' incapability to do anything offensively?
Well, I mean, you were in Manhattan 2 weeks ago, and you saw that. And then you saw it tonight. And so that's back-to-back games for Oklahoma State offensively of 256 total yards at K-State, 246 tonight. I'd have to go way back, and I will, to see how long it's been since they had back-to-back games with that were that meager with regard to yardage. But
yeah.
I mean, Iowa State against K-State today had over 500 yards and pitched a 45-point shutout. So I'm still a believer that OU, certainly the arrow is up on the defense. And when you play with that, it really the biggest criticism I could have of a couple of end zone flags and the Buki taunt.
Right.
But otherwise, I mean, OU was very solid defensively. And all they can do is defend the guys in front of them. And if that's what the best that OSU can put it in front of them, then good for OU. But I thought that 2014 was rock bottom for offensive line play for Oklahoma State. As we speak, these guys are on that level. I'd say it's a dead heat.
Yeah.
With what, especially now with Tevin Jenkins going out with an injury.
Right.
So I just wonder where they are psychologically going into to the stretch run for OSU.
Yeah, you mentioned the psychology, and that's such a big story in this game because for so long, OU comes in almost expecting success, right? And having 2 things, Bill, I think always go in their favor, it seems, in this game. It's the confidence that they're going to do well, and they come out, they're a little more courageous, maybe. I mean, and that's weird because you would think the underdog might play it that way, right? When the series doesn't turn your way. And I don't know if it was so much courage. Gundy, I think, kind of caved when he punted in the fourth quarter inside the OU 40. That was odd. There'll be some discussion about the use of Sanders after the hit by Perkins and him sticking with Illingworth as long as he did, and then going back to Spencer later in the game. But I didn't know if it was so much a courage issue as an energy issue. Oklahoma came out as if it was a team that had been on the wrong end of the series for years and was, damn set on doing something about it. I thought that would be Oklahoma State. I thought that if I was going to see a team more energized tonight out of the gate, not that it was going to translate into a big lead, it would be OSU. That was a little disheartening from an Oklahoma State perspective.
Well, and then Lincoln play calls them right down the field.
Right.
Start the game, and you throw a swing pass to Stevenson and he goes 45 yards, and then Rattler, on a beautiful decision to keep the football, or maybe it wasn't a decision, maybe it was his play all the way, I don't know, but beautiful change of direction at the 5 and leaves Trey Starling behind and scores, and you just thought, even Chris Fowler commented. I don't get to hear Chris Fowler very often.
I know.
He said, you give Lincoln Riley a chance to script, a possession.
Yeah.
And this is what you get. And so OU came out ready to go. It's like I wrote, if you could quantify ferocity, OU lapped OSU tonight from the opening kickoff. And so I never sensed that OSU was truly in the game at any point. And I was surprised too when you see Sanders get slammed to the turf. It looked like he got a little whiplash thing going, or he didn't look like a classic head bouncing hard off the surface, but I should shut up about it because I don't know.
Right.
But I know he didn't look good and he didn't seem well after that. And I was surprised he re-entered the game. I really was, especially when, how much hope was there really at that point?
Right.
They go up 34-13, and then you run him back out there. So I didn't understand that either.
If Lincoln Riley reasserted himself as a guy that had some imagination about his game plan, not only had some weapons, but used them, put him in position to make plays. There was some wonder about how he would react to this being such a different season with Rattler being a new quarterback and some replacements at receiver and running back without Brooks and Sermon at running back. And he sort of responded to that and retaking his place as one of the 2 or 3 premier play callers in college football. If he reasserted himself, Bill, did Mike Gundy, is he back to having to field questions from his fan base about this game? Or is this a mulligan because of all the problems?
Well, from 06 through 2012, and really you could say 2013, consistently, OSU had as good an offensive line as anybody in the league. And in at least 2 of those years, clearly the best offensive line. And they had injuries in those years, and they adjusted and coached up guys at multiple positions, and they coped and they flourished. 10 years ago, 2010, they gave up 10 sacks in 13 games. Whedon never got dirty. He never got hit. And so they have lost their way with regard to developing offensive line athletes, and they've got to get that figured out. And I do believe that when Mike says that Charlie Dickey is a superstar with coaching those guys,
right,
I'm inclined to believe that because of the results he got at K-State for so long, and because you hear nothing but positive reports on him out of Stillwater. They just don't have the players. They just don't. And I constantly hear for years now, well, they're so young in the O-line room. Man, at some point, you got to get old in the O-line room. You got to get veteran and get better than this. And, this season is a bit of a step back for OU up front, and they're miles beyond where Oklahoma State is with regard to the O-line. So it's just astonishing, the drop. This was supposed to be a special season for OSU. They were supposed to go to the Big 12 championship game.
Yeah.
Chuba Hubbard through 7 games last year, Guerin, had 1,270 yards. He's got 625 this year. Yeah. That's a 50% drop. And is it that Chuba quit? He forgot how to run the football? No, they just can't. They can't block for him. So he doesn't need a whole lot of help to get his yards, but they can't get him any help.
Let's finish on Oklahoma. it was interesting down the stretch of the game, and you mentioned listening to Chris Fowler. It was odd for you and I both to have access to the audio commentary of not just Fowler but Herb Street. What I think it was Herb Street who pointed out later in the game that he thought Oklahoma had the potential to be a more complete version of a playoff team than Riley and even Bob Stoops' past teams because of some of the guys on defense like Perkins and Perrion Winfrey, who were emerging as difference makers on the defensive line. You know, Oklahoma fans are going to hear that. And they're going to start thinking, they're going to start looking at the playoff rankings that come out Tuesday and start to dream up scenarios. Right. I mean, that seems almost interplanetary given their 2 losses and the fact they're 18th ranked coming into this game. But I'll just for fun, I'll ask, is there any chance that we have to look at playoff standings with regard to OU from here on out, or is this way too back of the pack to even bringing that up?
Don't the first standings come out Tuesday?
Yeah.
What's your guess on OU's positioning? I bet they're no worse than 10th.
Yeah, I was going to say around 10. But I don't know enough about Bill, to be honest. I've sort of given the playoff up as a lost cause from Oklahoma's perspective. If anyone had a shot, it was OSU, I thought, going into tonight's game. So I'd have to sort of balance the other 9 teams that might be ahead of them and their pluses or minuses, and that's impossible to do anyway in a season like this. So, but yeah, maybe around 10. I still think for me, it's one of those years, if you're an OU fan, if you can get a Big 12 championship and a Cotton Bowl win out of it, you've done pretty well for yourself. I just know that when you start to play this well, especially defensively, you start to wonder, right? I think that sets in. I don't know if it's going to translate in anything, but it is interesting that coming out of tonight's game, the one Bedlam school that seems to have a spark with regard to any kind of national aspiration is Oklahoma, and I didn't think it would go that way.